This is unbelievable. You guys are playing like this is some throwaway game up in Rochester. Who we playing, Rammer?
Sweden.
Yeah, you're damn right, Sweden! In the Olympics! What the hell's wrong with you? Put your gear on. I said put your gear on.
Doc told me I can't play.
Yeah, I know. You got a bad bruise. You know what? Put your street clothes on, because I got no time for quitters.
Come on, Herb. Nobody's quitting here.
You worry about your own game. Only there to keep you busy. Bruise on the leg is a hell of a long way from the heart, you candy ass.
What'd you call me?
You heard me.
You want me to play, huh? Is that what you want?
I want you to be a hockey
I
player!
am a hockey player! You want me to play on one leg? Huh? I'll play on one leg!
That'll get him going.
Get up!
It is depressing with like the weather that we're getting now. You're right. We're in that weird limbo time where there's just not that much to look forward to besides football and
I just would rather the temperature drop 30 degrees, put 4 inches to 6 inches of ice on the lake, maybe even put a foot and a half of snow so people can snowmobile, people can ice fish, people can ski.
Mhm.
It's just this, if we get 6 inches of snow, you don't want to haul your boat around.
No. And
Things
you
just get
said
messy.
you said we got football to look forward to. Are you a Vikings fan?
Nah, not after last. Well, I did. I was up north, and my neighbor texted and said, "I'll pick you up in 5 minutes." And I'm like, "Where are we going?" "We're going to Miller's house to watch the game." And I'm like, "I'll go there for a little bit." And I walked in, and I don't know everyone because they're all locals in Nisswa, but it was 50-50, half Packer jerseys and half Viking jerseys.
Wow.
Yeah, growing up in Minnesota, I would say I'm a kind of a Vikings fan, but like deep down, I have a lot of respect for the Packers. They went far for what, a dozen years. They rolled right into Aaron Rodgers for a dozen years. Each of them got a Super Bowl. They keep loving the wings down below. They kind of groom him for a few years, and then they let him out, and he takes them to a big first season. They were 25 point underdogs, and they beat San Francisco in the playoffs for the first round.
Dallas.
And I'm like, was it Dallas?
Yeah, Dallas.
So if I'm a fair weather football fan, I don't play fantasy. I bet every week on DraftKings with a bunch of buddies. I'm not very good at it. I win once in a while, pure luck. But I follow it, and I do follow the Packers too.
Nice. Well, Gus, who's gracing us with their presence here this evening?
We got none other than Jason Summers, and we're gonna dive into a whole lot. Jason's got a lot in his back pocket, whether it's tournaments, chaos. It's kind of been around for a while and still doing it. It's you and your partner, your now partner for the PMTT, Dan Matusik. You guys have been putting a hurting on the Muskies for 2 straight seasons, so we'll dive into that too. But pleasure having you on. Happy we got this to work out. And I don't know, Max, what do you want to dive in first?
What episode are we even on now, Gus? What are we clocking in at here?
I didn't look right away. One off the dome, I think like 131. Does that sound right?
Jason, how do you feel about being on episode 131 of the Muskies on Tap podcast?
Thanks for having me. I'm glad. I told Gus I started at episode 1 and I'm on like 73. So I'm about pretty much a year behind.
What's your thoughts on episodes 1 through like 11?
I'd have to go back and see the hosts, but I started listening before I met you guys in the PMTT, so it kept my attention. So I liked it out of the get-go. I liked the guests, and then I think when I met you, then I became more intrigued with listening.
Right on. Yeah, no,
Awesome.
I appreciate you tuning into them. We definitely we've been wanting to have you on for a while. Obviously, you know, we got a lot to chat about here this evening. We'll see how much we can pack in a short amount of time, but maybe let's just start with a little bit of your resurgence in the tournament game. Obviously, you've been doing tournaments for a long time, but the last couple years, you and Dan Watusick have kind of come back on the scene on the PMTT and have been stacking up, a lot of top tens, team of the year, all that good stuff in the last couple years. So, kind of give us your thoughts on like what made you guys want to kind of get back into it and how that all started.
I think in 2017, I fished, I think every PMTT and kind of every muskie tournament I could from probably about year 2000 on. In 2017, I fished one event with my son. He was 12 at the time. And, I was coaching lacrosse teams and hockey. So I kind of just backed off to make sure I was there for all their sports and stuff. And they grew older and I didn't fish any. COVID hit, so that made it a little tricky to get into them in hotels. And then Dan called me as soon as the schedule came out. He just said, "We're signing up for the whole thing and we're partners." And I said, I gotta think about that one. So Dan and I met in the PMTT like 25 years ago, have always got along, and our friendship gravitated to me uh, coming to Eagle River a few days early and fishing other bodies of water, and we always got along great. But I was afraid that if we fished the PMTT, as you guys know, you're together for 4 to 7 days, virtually 24/7. And I just wanted to make sure we would get along for 4 to 7 days as well as we do for one afternoon in the boat before a PMTT. And I, he kind of laid down some rules, and I laid down some rules, all fun. And I just said, God, and I was turning 50, and I thought, I wonder if I can do it still. So I'm like, you know what? I have more time on my hands. My kids are older. And I'm like, talk to my wife, and she knows I like it a lot. So yeah, I figured like, what do I got to lose? So Dan and I packed up and headed for the first one in Kentucky and pretty much laughed the entire trip.
That's awesome. I mean, from what I remember when we first talked to you guys, it sounded like I mean, you obviously take pre-fishing seriously and you want to like go into the tournament knowing exactly what you're doing, get a game plan just like any tournament. But we'd ask you like, what'd you do yesterday? It's like, how was your pre-fishing yesterday? You're like, yesterday? We played golf and this and hung
Yeah.
out and went to the bar and
Yeah,
had
there's a
lunch.
yeah, we make sure that we get plenty of sleep. We eat decent. Um, you know, and back when I was 22, I would get off work Wednesday at 5 o'clock, speed home, pack everything up, and leave at 6 to get there at 8 the next morning and fish like you guys did this year. And they
Right.
didn't have Red Bull back then, so it was caffeine and drinking coffee and trying to stay awake. But now we might leave at 8 o'clock and just mosey our way there, pick up a hotel room, and it's a little gingerly travel, and usually we're pre-fishing, we pulled out at like 5 o'clock to, sit down and eat a real meal and then get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I think it's an underrated aspect of fishing tournaments, especially doing like the PMTT stuff where you're actually traveling to events, how much time you spend with your partner and the people you're with. And, it's obviously kind of what makes them great, but at the same time, like you really got to be pretty dialed in and in tune with who you're fishing with because, yeah, you're going to spend a lot of time together and a lot of time in between, catching fish.
Yeah.
You obviously got to feel like you groove pretty well with the person.
Yeah, and Dan's the fourth person that I fished the circuit with, and the first three, none of them were like breakups or fights that dismantled us. It was just different pieces of our life. Things were happening where, my first tournament partner was Jason Hammernick. We went to high school together and played golf and all that. And really, he got into musky fishing based on a job and then drew me into it. We fished one season together, and then we kind of talked. And at that time, I think there was 18 trail teams, and each tournament had like 40 or 50 contestants. Other than, I think the first year I fished, we were in 3 lakes. That was a busy one. And then the next year I fished with Tony DeMars, and I did that for probably 10 to 12 years. And he kind of wanted to back off a little bit. And then another childhood buddy, Troy Bilbrey, kind of stepped in at the same time. And I fished with Troy for a number of years. But you're right. You really have to get along with somebody. I mean, you wake up together, you eat, you're doing nonstop stuff 24/7. And I was lucky enough to have all 4 people that I fished the trail with are all just great human beings.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it is cool. I haven't heard of too many like dramatic breakup partnerships during the musky, situations, but I'm sure they happen,
Oh,
there's
the first 20 years, you might even see a two guys enter the tournaments together, and by the second tournament, they were fishing solo. So I witnessed plenty of breakups, and me and Demars would giggle when we witnessed some of them because I watched a couple happen right before my eyes.
Unreal.
Yeah, it's like one tournament partner lost a fish. Next thing you know, they're rolling around in a gravel driveway fighting it out.
Oh my God. Gotta
Yeah, I
love that.
mean, people take it legit, and so so you come back on the scene after a hiatus, and you said something kind of interesting that you're like, I wanted to see if I could still do it. Obviously, I think you've answered that question over the past couple years, but what was it like kind of bagging that first fish in your first tournament back, and like did it kind of bring back some good memories, some good jitters? Like I'm curious as to what that was like.
Yeah, the contestants have turned. Like we walked in, I think to Kentucky, we walked in to check in, and Dan's like, "Man, you're gonna see a lot of people you know." And I didn't. Out of maybe there was about 100 boats, so what's that, 200 guys? There's maybe 30 of them that I knew. Just a lot of change, a lot of guys younger, and some of the guys that I recognized and I talked to, and their tournament partners have passed on or they can't physically do it anymore. So I'm like, holy cow. Yeah, I suppose we are old. Because when I walked into it, I was 22 or 23. They called Hammernick and I the kids, like, hey, where are the kids at? Um, so it brought a whole new sense of jitters in a little bit, but a little older. I think checking in and going through is when my heart was ready to beat out of my chest. And I'm like, God, I still like it a lot. And just fishing hard. And I liked it. The weather was good that year in Kentucky. It wasn't, freezing cold or raining.
Yeah.
And we caught some muskies down there, which was awesome. So
Do you think?
it's a
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask, was it the break, do you think, between tournament fishing and why you thought like the heart was beating going into coming back?
Yeah, you miss a few, you miss 4 years, so you miss 12 or 14 tournaments, and you don't go through the line and check in and the boat and everything else. I mean, it's been a number of years since, and I don't even know if I've backed a boat in, Saturday morning. I'm always the guy in my boat, and Dan's like, "You backed me," and I'm like, "Oh boy, like I don't remember doing this before." So I was a little bit more of the guy that was running, like catering to Dan a little bit, which that wasn't me for a long time. So, just backing it in with headlights shining on you, I was sweating about that, and everything went smooth as silk. But just having the jitters just brought back like some good memories. And
Yeah.
and I still get a little nervous, even catch a fish. I think if you laid your hands flat, whether Dan catches it or I catch it, you lay it down. I'm sure there's a little twitch to them. I get a little
Hmm.
nervous and excited. Whether the thing's 32 and a half inches or 52 and a half. I mean, I like them all.
Yeah, it's kind of it's definitely a feeling when you get fish in tournaments. It's hard to describe to people that, maybe haven't fished tournaments in the past or want to fish tournaments. Like it is really it's a really addicting feeling. Like getting one in a tournament, you know you're going to register it, and and I could only imagine like after taking a couple years off and being like, man, am I, because you had so much success like early on, you know, fishing tournaments. Like we went to your cabin, you know, the place is just littered with trophies, with muskie tournament trophies. And like you take that long off and you're like, oh, you know, do I still got it? Can I still do this? And I'm sure it was probably pretty cool that first year getting back into it, being like, we're catching fish. This is sweet, you know?
Yeah, and my motto with Dan, like, we fished all day Saturday. We might have saw fish. I think I caught about a 3 pound largemouth, and Dan's mind is just racing. I'm like, well, what about this and this and this? And I said, Dan, just take a deep breath. This is hard. Like, there's 100 boats. There's, 85 boats never caught one today.
Yeah.
So it's hard. Every day I'm like, if I can just get one bite and catch it, I'll be
Mhm.
happy. And when you get the
Yeah.
first one, the next cast, then you're just pumped up and like, God, we can just catch a pile of them.
Right.
But when we caught the first one, I'm like, man, to go all the way Kentucky and just catch one and pick up some points is a beautiful thing. And last year the championship was on Eagle River, which I mean, that was really my goal is like, boy, if we can just pick up some points and get there, that would be a bonus.
For sure.
But yeah,
Right.
there's nothing about musky fishing that's easy. I mean, whether you're in a tournament or even, Gus is guiding every day. I mean, that's a tournament in itself.
Mini tournament on the daily, yeah. But I mean, Kentucky in its own, from what we've found in the last couple of years, like that's like you said, one bite a day, you'd be very, very happy with. And just as you're describing, Dan's mind, it's always racing. You can just like glance over at that guy and you can tell that it's just churning and
It's
clicking
not,
and
yeah,
just nonstop, nonstop. And I guess there's a part of that Max and I've, you know, communicated to each other to like calm us both down. And I think that's extremely important, another way to like, mesh with your partner and and do well, be successful. Even if, you're both really good anglers, but you just don't communicate well or you get little feuds there and about spots and whatnot, like that can be a detriment for sure. But no, you guys definitely got her done. You took on your debut, you took second, I think. Am I
yeah,
correct?
we
Yeah.
miss, yeah, we're like maybe an inch off of winning.
I'd say that's pretty close. Game of inches.
Yeah, yeah, the payout goes a lot to okay. But if somebody said, "Hey, we'll just give you second place and you don't have to go to Kentucky," I would have took it. I mean, if I and it's one of my favorite places to go. I just wish it wasn't 13 hours from here.
It's a haul.
Sure. What do you like about Kentucky?
There's no cabins, there's no lakes, or cabins, and there's no speedboats, and it's just us
Mm,
fishing. You're hearing turkeys, you might see some deer. I've seen coyote down there. Um, there's no cabins, no docks. It's just pure wilderness, and it's not very busy. I'm sure
no.
that changes in July, but when we're down there in the spring, it's just a great place to be. The weather's warmer than it is usually up here.
It
It's
is
just
nice
laid back.
leaving the snow and then going down and seeing green. That
Yeah.
does help a
And like you
lot.
gotta you gotta crack at catching a muskie. There's times where I've went down there and we're still ice fishing up here.
Right. Hey, making me want to go to Kentucky again all of a sudden.
I went down there for a
Hey, oh,
championship, and it fishes more like lakes we fish up here in the fall with milfoil and weeds and deeper weed lines.
Yeah. I've
we have
seen
heard that.
videos and heard that from others, so it would be cool to be down there when maybe the fish are a little more active or the water is not, 20 feet above pool. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, no. So, so obviously, you guys kind of lit it up that year. You won team of the year. You know, we'll move on to other things, but what has been kind of some of the highlight moments from the last 2 years, kind of coming onto the trail that's, kind of since we've met you. Has there been any kind of tournaments or any moments that have stuck out of like this is awesome?
Oh, I think every tournament there's been a moment or two.
Yeah,
I guess really getting to know Dan better, spending 4 to 6 days at a crack with him, having dinner with his wife and daughter and his in-laws and when we fished Eagle River, we never even fished Eagle River. We went and pre-fished other bodies of water and hung out with some of his family. His neighbors watched Packer game after we won Team of the Year. They DVR'd it, and we watched it Sunday night. Meeting guys like you, kind of the next wave of people that are coming through and fishing. Which now, listening to your podcast and you and Clayton talking about side imaging and how many muskies you see on side imaging, I have it on my boat. I just don't pay attention enough to it. So I'm like, I almost need to hire you guys to fish out of my boat and show me how to operate it. But meeting the next generation of muskie fishing, reconnecting with Woodlackey, the PMTT, some of those guys, and meeting kind of new people. But there's a moment in every tournament that Dan and I are just laughing about and different memories in the last couple years.
right on. Yeah. So Gus, you got something?
No, I was gonna ask like is Dan a big I mean I've obviously gotten to know Dan a lot more, but is he a big time storyteller in the boat? Is he
I'm definitely the
are you
talker,
are you the yep.
which you probably can tell. But he's got a lot of stories, and he calls his mind the steel trap, and once something gets in there, he does remember it. Um, I was trying to tell Dan, like when the Cowgirl first came out, I had just got into muskies on the Cowgirl and just figured out like this thing is as magical as like the Jason Hamricks are telling me. And I brought one to Eagle River to fish with, and we were going out on I think 3 lakes, ripping around. And Dan said, "Can you just not bring like a bunch of stuff?" And I said, "I was just going to bring one rod and a plano with like 4 lures." And he's like, "Perfect." So I jump in the boat and I'm in the back and we're fishing. I have no idea where we're at, but it feels like we're in the middle of nowhere, right? It's kind of before GPSs and all that stuff. And Dan starts casting off the right side of the boat. I'm casting off the right side. He changes, casts off the left. I cast off the left. He finally stops and he says, stop following me. Like both sides are good. And my thought is he's trying to trap me into one or the other so he can catch them all. And then he's like, what's the lure there? And I'm like, oh, it's this new lure. It's a Cowgirl. And he's like, I've been wondering if that's too big for around here. And I'm like, I don't know. We're about to find out. And I think I caught one. Well, geez, I bet you it's 23 years ago that happened. And he can tell the story just as good today as he can 23 years ago. So he remembers a lot of that
Hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So we're talking about old baits. I'd be definitely remiss if I did not bring up the old Medussa, and we got to see the original one when we went to your cabin in Nisswa. But let's turn back the clocks a little bit and get the full rundown on how that bait came to be. I think it's put a lot of muskies in our boat. I know it's one of Gus's favorites, and yeah, just kind of curious as to how that all got started.
I I I was a big fan of the Bulldog, and I won a fair amount of money on the PMTT with it. I think it was pretty much responsible for way back then the Angler of the Year titles as well. And I just started in my mind just thinking like there's got to be a way to just make something bigger, better, and better. I was smart enough to know I would not have enough time with a full-time job and a wife and kids to like make it. And in my real job, I just bumped into a guy that imports stuff from China. So I made up a pretty ugly piece of rubber of what I wanted it to look like and about the size, and dropped some money down on a mold and got some lures. in the middle of the winter, and they worked, and it was just kind of a work in progress. And kind of got it dialed into what I thought, and just started real slow and went with it. I used it myself and a couple. I was too embarrassed to even tell good friends that it was my lure in the beginning stages because I didn't know what the reaction was going to be. So I was kind of handing them out in our community, like, hey, check this out. The guy that makes it wants me to get it in the right people's hands to see if they like it. Because if something really bad was gonna happen, I didn't want my name on it.
Right.
And then it grew a little bit bigger. And then finally, when I decided like I'm gonna do it, it was the PMTT championship in Bemidji, which coincidentally I never even qualified for, but I drove up there with the first batch of ever Medussas and just gave them to all the tournament guys. Like, let me know what you think. And the next day, like, there's guys like, God, I saw a couple fish on it. I'm like, you're crazy. If somebody handed me a lure Friday night, I would never let that
Drill
thing
that.
touch the water on Saturday. But I was like, did it work well? Talking to some of those guys.
Yeah.
And that was late in the fall. And then I kind of did the musky shows, did some stuff. And then in the spring, I'll never forget, Tony Grant's client Mike caught like a 52 incher like in April. And that was kind of a kickstart. Other, like around here, we have Thorn Brothers. Rowley and Helen's Jim I got to know and was sending them some lures. But, I was really lucky just on the PMTT. I was lucky enough to become friends with guys like Greg Thomas, Jason Hammernick's a good friend, Ty Sennett, Tony Grant. I met Crash Mullins when he was alive. Justin was guiding. So I'd kind of just sprinkle it out a little bit to those guys. So, a lot of the guides were kind of the ones that kind of got the underground and the word of mouth out there.
Like, what were some of those early success stories like though? Like when like you kind of mentioned, like, you handed them out in tournaments and guys saying, oh, I saw fish here, saw fish there. Like, when do you feel, outside of the one that you talked about, the 52 that Tony's client caught, but like some of those early success stories, like, did you ever all of a sudden just get a text out of the blue, like, hey man, this Medussa is crushing fish. Like, let your friend know that I want some more,
It
or what?
it wasn't like overnight.
Yeah.
Like Ben Olson went to Vermilion with a guy by the name of Andy Hutter, and I think he caught a 57 incher, like really. It was opening weekend of deer hunting because I was driving home, and as soon as I got service, I was like, oh my God, like, did somebody die? And it was just text messages. So it wasn't it. I mean, Andy Hutter with that 57 incher, and I was small enough because I'd only sold them to like Thorn Brothers, Rowley and Helen's. I shipped some down to Crash's Landing, some other Kentucky bait shops. So I was small enough that I had a pretty good beat on kind of what was happening. But then all of a sudden, an Iowa guy might send me an email through the Cast Tackle website about a big fish he got and where you can buy them. And then it was a matter of within days, I would get a call from like Stan's Bait in Iowa. Hey, can we order some baits? So it was pretty easy to follow where it all was happening. But I have like I'd have to go back in my work computer, but I have all that stuff logged because to even try to promote it further, I offered like a free t-shirt if you caught one over 50 inches.
Oh, I'd imagine like marketing a bait back then, you don't have Facebook groups and podcasts and YouTube videos. Like, the marketing had to have been just pure word of mouth to a degree.
Yeah, and a lot of guides, which from the PMTT, that's how those guys were becoming famous too. Like Greg Thomas was the first ever angler of the year in the PMTT. And Tony Grant, Crash Mullins, Dave Christian. So I was kind of sprinkling those out. Mike Hulbert was another one. Like, I feel like I could send Mike Hulbert back in the day 10 Medussas, and he was calling me a week later, like, "Hey, they're all damaged. I need new ones." And he was on Musky Hunter, had a big chat room. There was Musky First chat room, so I'd kind of follow that. But I'm not smart enough on a computer to play the game of all the different logins and promote my own bait. And I always thought if I get caught doing that, it's not going to look good. So I just elected to kind of give them to to guides and try to go that route and get them through Thorne Brothers, and I didn't want to grow too fast because you know it could have just sank me financially too.
Right. How big
Hmm.
was that first model that you made, like the original Medusa compared to the ones that are out now?
It's the exact same. So the original China ones, I still have some. It's the regular Medusa you see now.
Okay.
The very first batch have a hook out the back, which I'll get some emails now and messages from guys. I don't even want to say the guy's name, but he obviously has found someone in China that'll send them to him because he's sending them online all the time. And I'll get messages like, "Hey, are these your first batch?" And I'm like, "No, because we never made that color." So those trickle around a little bit, but I went from that guy to another guy from China, and that was the regular Medusa that was manufactured forever. And then as I grew, it gets tricky to import them from out of the country. And I thought, boy, if my importer and the leg of importing it from China, if something happens, I don't really have a business. So I geared up and started buying aluminum molds and going through the process of making them here. And
Hmm.
that probably took 2 years. And it was probably the best thing I ever did because then you can make 10 lures or 1,000 of one color. So it transformed into all American made, but it's tricky because you need a mold for the wire, the lead, like you need 12 molds. So
12 per lure?
I might be exaggerating on the 12, but it's a
Okay.
lot.
But sure, I didn't really know that. I mean, I don't I'm pretty ignorant on the subject of pouring rubber and making lures that way other than a bucktail. Um,
Yeah,
but
so I paid a guy to like bend the wire and then he would send it and he'd put the lead on it and then you need the lure mold and then you need to buy multiple lure molds. So it was a big process. It was something I'm glad I went through. So I learned a lot. But then we American made, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the
so
point.
oh
Go ahead.
sorry, no go ahead.
Oh,
I didn't mean
it got bigger where I mean you couldn't walk anywhere in my garage or my house or my attic and not come across lures. And every night was shipping lures, and I got into some of the bigger box stores and had to figure out UPC codes.
mm,
So and I was able to lean on Brad Hoppy that made the Cowgirl. He became a pretty good friend and he would help me out a lot.
right, because so give us like a time frame of this. Do you have like a year or span when this kind of came about? Because the Cowgirl was '05, '06, '04 ballpark.
Yeah, I'm
Cam was getting
thinking
bigger.
I have the time frame, but it probably '06, and I think maybe I sold it in, boy, I should know that date, but
That's all right. I was also going to ask, like, so when you started, obviously, like uh, you developed it or you had the idea pop up in your mind. Um, I guess before I ask further, where did the Medusa name come from, and where did the Chaos Tackle name come from?
so the Medusa, my name was the Scorpion for it because of the one tail that comes out the back, kind of the scorpion hanging over. So I
Mm.
kind of started calling it the Scorpion, and Jason Hammernick had some of them. And I'd go like 3 days, and I'm like, "So what do you think of that thing?" And he's like, "I haven't even casted it yet." I'm like, "I just let me know what you think of it in the water." And then finally, maybe 3, 4 days later, we'd talk, and he's like, "Man, thing looks like Medusa flying through the air with all the hair." And I'm like, that's a better name than the
Oh.
Scorpion. So I ran it past a bunch of buddies, and they're all like, "Yeah, that is pretty cool." So technically, Jason Hammernick came up with the name Medusa.
Scorpion does sound a tad ridiculous now that I'm saying it out loud. Like I caught it on the
Yeah,
Scorpion. I mean, it
the
kind of sounds
Scorpion.
badass in a way, but
Yeah. So yeah, so Hammernick came up with he's like, "It looks like Medusa, the hair flying everywhere." And
yeah.
And he was probably, I think, one of the last people to ever say, I really like it and it works. Can I get some more?
Hmm.
And he's probably my closest friend in that famous guide group. So I did the worst job with my best friend there. So,
Yeah, that kind of tracks though,
and
in a way.
yeah, and the chaos, I'm almost certain Tim Woodlackey, the PMTT, came up with that name.
Right
And
on.
I didn't,
Nice.
I wanted to stay away from the word musky,
Hmm.
I
just in
think
case,
smart. Yeah.
just
Just
in
think,
case it took a different direction, or I got my fingers into the bass world trying to explain somebody the name musky involved with a bass lure. So
Did you ever try to create a different rubber bait outside of the Medusa, or did you just kind of try to continue to hone in on the Medusa and the different variations of it, after
um
the original one?
so I did that one, and then the next one I came out with was the mini, and then the monster. And to be honest with you, um I had financially, I was full just trying to keep up with that,
Sure.
and then trying to integrate another size and fill in gaps and colors and the dynamics of how it all changes. And it was, I would say, in a 7-day work week, I was staying up 2 nights a week. And I
Wow.
mean, not staying up till like 1 in the morning and sleeping for 5 hours. I'm talking about staying up until the sun comes up and settling boxes and packing and shipping labels, and then maybe take a little nap before my real job.
Jeez.
It I was too afraid to like I shouldn't say too afraid. I didn't want to wreck friendships over free help, although I did rely on some friends quite a bit. So I opted to do it myself, and my wife was probably the biggest contributor, and she kind of just hated eventually hated to go to FedEx and UPS and hauling stuff out and stuff. So we had
Did
three little kids. So, there she is hauling three little kids with however many thousands of Medusas and boxes multiple times a day. So she
did
was
did,
a pretty big saint in the whole ordeal.
did people at your full-time job know that you were staying up making, giant rubber baits for musky fishing at night
I
or what?
so I never made any. So
Okay.
I was paying another guy after it came to America. I was paying him to pour them, and it was kind of um I'm like, I don't know what this is worth. You have to start pouring them, and we need to figure this out and painting them and stuff. But I paid my mom. She used to hook them and pack them, and she was like quality control. She was better than probably anyone I ever know. I could drop off more musty lures than you've ever seen in your life, and she could call me the next day and say, "You need some more." I mean, she could split ring faster than anyone you've ever seen and pack them and set aside bad ones. So but I wanted to pay her so I didn't feel like I was using her. So she took care of a lot of it, but I had to still pack the orders, and I had a fax machine down in our laundry room and email, and yeah, and I own my own business in my real career, but I have business partners, and they used to say, "Just bring it here." And I'm like, I don't think they know how much work this is.
Yeah.
So so I always kept it separate. I kept it at home.
Yeah, I was just curious because musky fishing and obviously creating musky baits and especially the scale that you were doing it at, it's like it's such a time, such a giant amount of time that like you show up at your real job in the real world and you're just like it's just it's two different worlds. Like I always joke with Gus, when we go on these really long weekends or tournament weekends, and it's like you're sleeping on floors or you're fishing for 14 hours a day, and then you show up at work on Monday and people are like, "How's your weekend?" You're just like, "It was good."
Yeah.
Not having any idea that you just literally spent
we
36
we
hours on a boat and 50 hours of
yeah, you went through some people's hell. Like some people hate that. And you're just
Yeah.
like, I had a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I got older, the sleeping on the floor or the couch or the cot just like zipped. Matter of fact, one of the hotels we had at a tournament this year, one night, and Dan's like, "We ain't doing this again." I'm like, this really isn't too bad. He's like, I already found something better. And I'm like, when? It's 6 in the morning. He's like, I was up at 3. I'm like, all
Oh
right.
no.
Oh boy.
So back to the original Medusas, you're giving them out to guides, but you yourself, I mean, were you catching on these baits? Did you believe in them from the
Oh,
get-go?
yeah. Yeah, I was the first. I caught the first ever muskie. I would say the first dozen muskies. And I guess one of my favorite stories would be I jumped in my boat with, um, it would be my wife's uncle who loved muskie fishing, but he doesn't know all the names of the lures and stuff. So me and him are in my boat, and my brother-in-law, who's a good angler, and my wife's cousins in their boat. And I think I had 6 bites and caught 3 on like a 6 a.m. to noon thing on the original Medussa over 4th of July. And my brother-in-law was like, how'd you guys do it? And I said, well, I think I had 6 bites. They could be pike, but I'm like, we caught 3. And the cousin's like, on what? And I held it up and they both started laughing. And I'm like, oh, God, this is going to be a hard lure to sell. So yeah, I believed in it. I right out of the gate. I mean, opening day with the original ones. I brought 2 guys fishing and we fished for 4 or 5 hours. And then I brought one out and started slinging around it a little bit. I think I caught one that morning. I left at noon and they're like, "Can you leave those with us?" They caught 3 more that day. So I knew I had,
Something.
yes.
Yeah.
And there's a couple lakes in Minnesota. It's not as good today as it was back then, but yeah, they were biting them like crazy. But I wanted to just sprinkle them out to make sure they weren't going to fail, break. Um, the last thing in that era of musky fishing, the importing it from China was just starting to become kind of a big deal. And there was people like struggling with rods, some of the lures, and I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. If my name is on it, I want to be able to use it and like it.
What was the rod situation on those original Medusas? Like what were you throwing? What did people have?
I was a G Loomis guy until they sold the Shimano and kind of got out of the musky world. So I was a G Loomis Calcutta with like a 7'7" heavy.
That's
Jeez.
gonna flex.
Yeah. I'd like to take you guys back to about 2000, well, even like 96, go back to 96 to a Abu C4 and some of the options we had. I mean, today's pretty special. There's a lot of pretty cool stuff. Yeah, there's one right there.
That's my first musky reel right here. That's an Abu 5600 C4.
Yeah, I when the Calcuttas came out, I thought, I mean, there's no way they're gonna make anything better than this.
Yeah. And it is crazy because like, thinking back, like so original, I mean, a normal size Medusa on a 7'7" heavy, like that, I couldn't imagine like how you guys were working those things. Just it's a whole different world now. We're throwing them with 10 foot to 10'6" rods, 500 tranks. It's just a totally different game.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody complained. We were all doing it.
Yeah. Well, back then you guys had to walk to school uphill both ways, and
I That was my dad. I never did.
oh,
One way was downhill.
yeah. So let's maybe go back to some of those early tournament days. What was tournament fishing like back then compared to what it is now? I mean, is it any different or was it pretty similar? I mean, was it a little bit more like the Wild Wild West back then in the early 2000s when you got started, or do you feel like it's hasn't really changed much?
No, I think, I mean, back then I think there was different. Well, when I first got into it, what you noticed is you could drive around the lake and look at how people were fishing, and I could tell you where they were from.
Hmm.
Um, like Illinois guys, they were right up against shore, and Wisconsin guys were out in like 4 to 6 feet. There was nobody open water. If you're from New York, Chautauqua, like you were trolling, like it was just like people specialized in different things. And at the end of the tournament, if so and so was in first place with 2 muskies, I could almost tell how they caught them. And back then, me and Demars were kind of like, we need to figure out from all these different people how to get them. And we did just like you guys. We would try to schedule a tournament with another group, like to stay in an area with another group of people, whether that was in a big 4-bedroom cabin or a hotel, and get our own rooms and hang out together and grill food. So there was little, I wouldn't call them teams, but there was little groups of people that hung out together. And the first year there was only 20 trail teams. Now there's like 50, so it was much smaller. It was easier to get to know the entire field very fast, but everyone got along. Everyone, for the most part, would share informations. And like Dale Wiley was another one. He'd come from way out east, and he has Wiley trolling lures that I had never even heard of. And he was catching fish everywhere he went on them. And I wasn't really a troller at all. But start learning from him, just talking to him, not trying to steal information for that particular tournament, but just trying to learn more about trolling to maybe have that in my back pocket when I need it. So it was a lot of shared information, learning different things. The internet was kind of kicking off. There was no GPS. Um, Nowadays, I feel like
Wow.
you guys are the tournament anglers are really significantly faster in adapting to what's happening. Moon phases, side imaging, GPS, mapping chips. I feel like you could drive to any lake that's that's mapped out and have 6 spots. Everyone can do that nowadays.
Right. I got an interesting question since you fished the PMTT in the early days and you fished, I mean, well, I guess we just give Eagle River Three Lakes as a good example since that's been around in that trail pretty much through the whole span is although trail teams has differed or amount of entries have differed, between, full field of 125 or 80 or 60. Do you think like catches have been about the same? Like people catching the same amount? Because I mean, a lot of people right now, everyone's got the electronics. Everybody can kind of figure it out a little bit quicker. And if they can put a game plan together, like more people should catch fish, but maybe it's harder because the fish are more educated. And then there's back then where you could argue that the fish were less educated, but the people that got on them could really get on them.
Yeah, I mean, I
Or,
you'd have to look back through. But I feel like there's more muskies caught today than there was back then. However, this year's championship just was in Iowa, and the winners had 9. And I'm like, I don't. I mean, that's a record right there. And out of what there was, like 48 teams and 120 some muskies, I think it was the most muskies in an event. So that's my last memory of a PMTT. But in Cave Run, I think this year one fish won it, and there it was like 46 or 48, and it just went right down to 10th place, just single fishes. Last year it was 3 fish in first, 3 fish in second. It seems like it takes normally a triple to win. The weather can cripple that, but um, I feel like there's more fish caught today if they're going to the right bodies of water. Um,
hmm
Madison, Wisconsin last year seemed like it was low catch rate, and that might be just where that body of water is in stocking and things. But the tournament in Madison, Wisconsin, years ago, I think it took 6 fish to win in late September. So I don't know if that
Gotcha.
fishery is
Yeah.
struggling right now, but
I've heard mixed reviews. I mean, based on what we saw 3 years ago now, our first time down there, we enjoyed it a lot. And then it flipped the switch. Talked with people about last year, why it was so bad. And I mean, we heard it was like between two leagues up until that point in June, there was like one fish caught out of all those weeks, all those anglers out once a week, and only one muskie was registered. So I guess it was tough from the start. But then I hear about people this summer, as soon as it was like cooling off, like you said, later in the year, people were hammering them on the Madison chain, and they're getting giants, 52 to 53s and whatnot. So I'm sure it's okay, but it's probably not uh what it used to be.
Yeah, I'm not a biologist, so and I don't really look into that stuff too heavy, but there's just years or 2 year windows where lakes just don't fish as well as they have.
Right. So, and what you said earlier was very interesting, and we 100% have talked to both you and Dan about this. When you would see who's doing well, you could pretty much bank on, oh, there's, hammer and dive and rise lures, or oh, that team's doing well. They're burning single bladed bucktails. Did you guys, you and your partners that you had through the years, did you guys have your little go-tos?
Yeah, yeah, Demars and I, once the first year we fished together, we struggled. And then like the next year we just talked about it, like, let's just do what we're really comfortable and what we feel like we're the best at. And then we just started having success. And then before GPS, we would look for something different. So we might just eat a sandwich and grab a pop and just drive around a lake and then just look for obscurities within the bottom or humps that people would leave alone and kind of look for oddball structure that maybe nobody found, which that doesn't even exist now with the mapping. But we would always look for different things that maybe somebody else wouldn't find. But once I became comfortable with like what we're gonna do is when I became I feel like a better tournament angler.
That sounds about right. I mean, that makes sense to me as well. I'm sure with Max. As soon as we've tried to, not tried to, but like maybe on accident, started throwing what people say should work at a body of water, or talking with somebody about their home water, like this, we catch fish here in this area, or we catch them on this type of bucktail. Uh, sure, we've caught a few doing that or following some people's advice that way, but more times than not, we just go back to the well, is what we call it, just right back to what we know best, and it's working, certain rubber lures how we like to, throwing the types of blades that we like to, especially when, I mean, I think the best thing we want to hear when we're going to a tournament is when somebody says they only eat this or they don't eat this, because then you just don't listen to that and go completely opposite. Like when they say they don't ever eat just some, I don't know, I'll make it up. They don't ever eat a 10-inch crankbait. We're probably going to try a 10-inch crankbait, or
Yeah,
crankbait in general.
yeah, I agree. I just want like once Demars and I and just stopped listening to getting involved in the Friday night registration and some of the other stuff and just said, well, let's just go with what our gut tells. We just became good. And then through that, we tried to, learn some other stuff, like learn trolling from Dale Wiley, some of his viewpoints. And then, I don't know, maybe see somebody we know fishing out in the middle of a lake, like after the tournament's over, like call them and say, hey, what were you doing out there? And just listen to them and
Yeah.
like, huh, well, that's weird. And then maybe when we're home in the next month, putting around our own lake, look for what he saw out there and try to fish that.
Yeah, I think like sometimes when people say like, "Oh, I'm trying to do something different," it comes across as maybe a little cliche, but I think like and I don't know where you grew up and what types of lakes you grew up fishing on, but like at least for Gus and I, growing up on the Eagle River chain and kind of cutting our teeth there on really pressured bodies of water, and then like, I'm fishing Minnetonka quite a bit in some of these metro lakes, like it is crazy, when you're throwing stuff that other people aren't. You find success and then you see it in tournaments, other people doing stuff that's different, like you're talking about, and you watch them have success, and you just see it happen so often where it's like it makes sense that like if you're going out and fishing, you might as well just try off the wall shit because it does work quite a bit. You know what I mean?
Some,
And if you're just doing what everyone else is doing, especially if you're on these pressured bodies of water, it can be tough. You can get into ruts.
yeah, yeah, I agree.
And it's
And then
like,
Yeah.
yeah,
in the tournament, one thing I always liked about the tournament is I like the competitive nature of it, but B, there is always a result.
right.
A
There's no
PMTT,
bullshitting.
yeah, There's none. Like at the end, they're like, we're gonna introduce you to the top 10 guys and um see what they did and how they caught them. Now they might not always give you the straightest answer or tell you the exact lure, but I tease Dan because he's won Eagle River many a times. For those that don't know, Dan just won his 30th tournament this year, muskie tournament. Um, but Dan does the greatest job of telling the greatest story and entertaining the crowd with not releasing one bit of pertinent information to any angler. He walks off the stage and everyone's just like, "What a great speaker that guy is!" But
The
I'm
hell
like,
did he do?
what did he do? He would now he is starting to loosen up on the lure and the tactic a little bit, but back then he would just tell great stories and everything, and not one piece of information came out. So I tease him about that all the time. But anyway, they'll go through the top 10, and some guys are just so excited to have a plaque, a check, or a win. They'll tell you exactly what happened. And it's like an aha moment. Like, I'd never even thought about that.
I would say almost every tournament that we do, there's somebody in the top 10 that is doing something that I am like, oh, that's cool. I just would not have thought
Yeah.
about doing
Right.
that. You know what I mean? Like,
And yeah, and there's some tournaments where like the top three, like this is what happened. And I'm like, I was never going to win that tournament ever because I will never do that. And you know what? If that bite ever happens again, I won't win that one either because I do not enjoy fishing like that. There's still you need confidence and you need to believe in yourself.
yeah,
Just look in the mirror and like, we're going to get bit today a couple of times.
yeah.
And that helps a lot. Like DeMars and I would joke, by 9 a.m., I would say back in the day, 30% of the field's out of it. Guys drinking coffee, kicked back in the chair, relaxing. And DeMars and I are ripping to the next spot. Like, man, we've only been out here for 2.5 hours,
Hmm.
and I'm just smart enough to fish all day, but I can talk myself into catching one. Like, just bring me anywhere. I can just pump myself up. Dan's the same way.
Where did you cut your teeth learning how to musky fish?
So I grew up in Lino Lakes, which is Forest Lake, north of the
Yeah.
cities.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of Forest Lake fishing, real close to my house, white bear, bald eagle. Um, but I really fell in love with Mille Lacs. I'm in the flooring business, and so is Hammernick. And he took a job in Duluth temporary, and somebody introduced him to muskies up there. And I think they were shoe pack strains, so you could go catch like 5, 6 of them a day,
Yeah.
but they weren't very big. So he would come back from Duluth and say, "Let's go musky fish," and we go to like Bald Eagle, and I just hated it. Like back then, like these shitty Bass Pro Shop rods, they were heavy, the reels, and just throwing and casting. And we'd fish for 8 hours and never see one, never nothing. And then he's a couple weeks later, he's like, "Let's go musky fishing." I'm like, "Where are you going?" If I can throw some crankbaits on the weed line and catch some pike or bass, I'll come.
Hmm.
And then we ended up on Mille Lacs and found out there is tons of muskies up there, and they're 34 to 38 inches, and we're catching 6 to 10 a day. And it was the tallywhacker. So next thing you know, we'd go into Thorn Brothers and buy like 4 tallywhackers and just go to Mille Lacs and catch 6 or 8 muskies a day, little ones. And I just loved it. So between Mille Lacs, Forest Lake, Bald Eagle, that kind of got us going.
And then you guys kind of just grew with the muskies in a way. I mean,
Well, then we were just eager for information, walking around like two 20-year-old dummies and Thorn Brothers asking questions. And next thing you know, we subscribed to Muskie Hunter. And then there's this professional muskie tournament trail that travels around, and it's either one fish or 2 fish that wins. I don't know why we can't just enter and catch our 6 to 8 like we do in Mille Lacs and win a few of these.
it
So
was
our
only that easy.
Yeah, so our first
Oh
tournament, we
man.
drove all night to Kentucky. It threw the boat in. I think we ran to our first spot, fished for maybe a half hour and saw 3 muskies, and we're like, "Oh yeah, this is just like Mille Lacs, I think." And those were the last 3 muskies we seen in 4 days.
Oh my God.
So
Unreal.
two young dumb guys. So that's kind of how it got started. And then once the tournament thing hit, and I'm like, we never even seen one in the tournament. You go back like, whoa, all those guys caught him and seen him. I'm like, we need to figure this out a little bit.
Hmm.
So
Right on.
fuel to the fire. And then at that time, like Minnesota fishing just kept getting better and better and better. Mille Lacs, those fish went from 36 to 38 inches to 40 to 45 to they just kept getting bigger and bigger. And we became better anglers and just started kind of cleaning up.
Yeah. We've had a couple guests on that have talked about kind of that Minnesota heyday, and it does sound really fun. I will say, the seems like the state of the fisheries around here don't seem to be in bad shape. I mean, I've been lucky enough to fish a lot of the Twin Cities lakes this year, and Gus and I did a trip up to Vermilion. Obviously we were all in Casp Bemidji this year for the PMTT, and I mean, if they're definitely not the easiest things to catch, and you've said musky fishing is hard, but man, there's still plenty of opportunities to get it done
Oh, for
around
sure.
here.
I mean, there was way more fish caught this year on Cass Lake than I ever thought there would have been. I mean, the
Yeah,
the bite up there, I was like, oh, there was a lot of guys with fish. And kudos to the
Unreal.
guys that won it. They had what, six, I think?
yeah, a lot of big
Yeah.
fish.
Yeah. So yeah, I think if you just put your time in, things change, right? Lakes change. Um, Zebra mussels are out. I remember when milfoil just came out, everyone thought that was going to be a huge detriment to everything. Now there's zebra mussels on lakes. I mean, things are just changing. I'm sure the fish habits the movement's different, the spots are a little bit different. So there's still more to learn.
Yeah. Do,
Always. It's
you
yeah.
do you still feel like you're learning quite a bit the last couple years doing these tournaments?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I need to learn side imaging a little bit more. I do have a live scope, but I tend to just not even turn it on because I like the fishing and BSing with my buddy more than the looking and watching.
Hmm.
But I'd like to be more effective with a live scope with side imaging. Yeah, there's a lot to learn, but I don't know if it's old age, but I've definitely zoned in on my lure selection. Where I would go down to Kentucky, DeMars, and I would go down there with six tackle boxes just plump full. And the first time I went with Dan, I had three little Plano boxes.
Hmm.
And never at one point in that tournament did I ever say, boy, I wish I would have brought this or that. I mean, I've just narrowed down to what I like and what I'm going to catch them on and what I trust a little bit more, how I fish and the spots and stuff like that. So I think that can be a little bit of a downside to tournament angling. If you just see stuff happening, I'm so
Sure.
focused on what I'm doing that I try not to sway away and get wrapped up into or get pulled away from my mental plan.
It's funny you mention that. I feel like, I've jumped in a lot of people's boats this year, and a lot of times, I've got a big lake wood, and I found myself lately, instead of bringing everything, that I've just kind of thrown in like three or four baits. And I've noticed it kind of ups the confidence in the stuff you bring, and it kind of takes a little bit of the indecision away because you're just like, you kind of think about it beforehand. You're like, all right, here's what I'll throw. And then if that's not working, here's kind of the backup. And if that gets sick of throwing that, then here's the third option. And when you
Yeah.
only have like three or four things to look at, you kind of take away that decision paralysis, and you're just like, all right, I got to catch a fish with one of these four baits.
Yeah. And I mean, if I'm going to Canada for a week and a half, I'm probably bringing it all. But
Hmm.
um,
Sure.
and this year when we went to Iowa, Dan drove and I drove, we met there, and honestly, both of us had the back of our trucks loaded with stuff,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, by the time the tournament starts, yeah, I'm down to, just a narrow vision of lures and minimal rods.
Hmm.
And so I'm sure that is a hindrance sometimes, but I feel like I'm always learning, but I do have kind of the peaky blinders on a little bit and focused where I'm not always listening to the chatter and stuff. I stopped that years ago.
Yeah. Well, Gus, what else do you think we got for Jason? I think we definitely left enough meat on the bone for part two down the road. But you got anything else? I think we're running at a perfect hour 20, hour 30 right now.
Hour-ish. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean I can try and think as we, possibly wrap this up. This has been a fantastic chat. I think it was very cool to hear the beginning of chaos and kind of how you just had to throw it all in the garage and ship it all out. You're, pretty much a one-man army plus family and getting her done with a pretty damn successful lure that is
Yeah, and
still
I mean,
around.
as you guys would say, shout out to Rick Albers because he's who I ultimately sold it to. And I don't know if he sells more Medusas than I did, but he definitely tacked on rods, top water, jerk baits, and
Hmm.
everything that I set up. I think he changed a few things here and there, but I think the company that's pouring them and painting them is the same that I kind of started with. And Rick, it's cool to just see and hear the lure still going. And I actually just this past weekend I was up at my cabin in Nisswa and talking, and um, guy kind of bumped into me. Sorry. He's like, "What do you do for a living?" I'm like, "That's kind of a weird question." I said, "Floor covering," and he did docks. And next thing you know, he's a huge musky fisherman. And I said, "Oh, geez, you ever use the Medussa? He's like one of my favorites. Do you?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And I strung him along for about 20 minutes before I told him it was mine. And he wouldn't believe me. So he Googled it and had to find a picture. He's like, "You really?" I'm like, "Yeah, I made it. I don't anymore. I haven't for years." But stuff, situations like that is kind of neat. And it happens more the older I get and, the bigger the lures become.
That's probably pretty surreal.
It's kind of neat, and Rick did a great job with keeping it going. Now he recently sold it, and I believe his name's Vince, which fished the PMTT in Eagle River this year. And I met him.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, it was at like 5 in the morning, so we didn't chat long, but it'll be nice. It'll be nice to meet him one day and talk about it.
For sure. Yeah. Do you still throw Medusas around?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And actually last year, the first tournament that I fished with Dan, um, the first fish he caught was on a bulldog. And then he took it off and handed it to me and said, "Here, you use this." And I said, "Stop it. I don't need your pity. Like, put it back on." And he's like, "No, no, no. Put this on." And he held up another lure and he said, "I see myself with this lure in the back of the boat for the rest of the day. And we're catching more, Jay." And I'm like, "All right, well, let's run down to that other spot." And we went over there and fished 6 minutes, and he caught his second one. And he said, "Now I know for a fact I'm going to be in the back of the boat with this lure." And I would say 4 hours later, I caught the third fish on a bulldog, which really close buddies of mine. When I came up with the Medussa, I gave all my bulldogs away. Like, I better not be caught with them.
Mhm.
So I've caught quite a few fish in tournaments in the last 2 years on the bulldog. But in the peak, when I owned the Medussa, I caught quite a few fish on them in the tournaments. And guys didn't believe me. They're like, that's publicity." And I'm like, "I've owned the Medussa for 4 years, and this is the first tournament fish I've caught on him. If I was going to lie about it, I'd have been lying for the last 4 years."
Yeah, every fish would have been on a Medusa.
Yeah. I said this one time, and then they're like, "You're trying to trick us." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm not a liar." But yeah, I still use Medusas. When I sold the company, I kept plenty. I kept my favorites. You've seen what kind of the stash I have at the cabin, a bunch of the originals. I have some of the originals here at my house downstairs in a box that I don't know if I want to frame them or just go get them ate. And then I have, my stash in the garage. So yeah, I still use them. I like them. I haven't bought one yet, so I don't know what today's version is, but I'm sure I'll find out.
That was going to be my next question. It's like, which ones do you still use if you do use the Medusas? And that
Yeah.
answers it.
Yeah, I've got a couple favorites that have caught a lot of fish that I get nervous. Like in the tournament, I was fishing it, and Dan's like, "What?" And I'm like, "This thing's caught so many fish. At some point, it's going to break, and I just don't want it to be today."
Right.
Yeah, I was in the boat with Clayton in Tuesday Night League. He had this eagle pattern regular Medussa, still from the newer, whether it was Rick or Vince, but he's like, this has caught so many freaking muskies, and I was looking at him like, oh my God, that thing is about to fall apart. And literally that day he catches one in the figure eight. We put it in the net, it thrashes around, and it's like, oh, the hooks popped, and it's like, no, the hooks didn't pop, the harness broke.
Yeah, yeah, I broke a lure, old boot tail given me by Dave Durazio way back. And this year in Cass Lake, the first fish I caught was like 49 and a half or whatever it was. And we netted it, um, and now it's kind of, we let the fish go, did all our business, and we're sitting there talking, and I'm looking at the lure and I'm messing with it. And all of a sudden, pretty soon, I'm holding two separate chunks of the lure.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, how does a bucktail break? So there we were, and Dan's just like like, all right, we can take this and cut this and make this. And I just dug
Already
out.
on it.
He was ready to recreate it. I'm like, I can't, like this is integrated into it. This would be tough. We could do it when we get back to my cabin. And he's like, well, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, well, I'm just gonna use this one. This one's gonna catch some fish. And I went from black with a green tail to blue and silver with a regular silver blade. And I know in his mind, he's like, that's nothing like what we are throwing. The blade, everything about that thing is different. And I caught two more on that other one.
His mind had to have been just turning even more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. It is kind of one thing I always think about. It's kind of funny when you're out in the water because you have what you have in your tackle box. You throw what you throw. If you throw these types of bucktails or whatever, and all of a sudden you catch one on one or you're moving them on the certain one, you think in your head, like, oh my God, this is the only bucktail that's working right now. And then you forget that somebody else is probably on the lake on the other side, caught one on a bucktail that's totally different manufacturer and everything.
Y- Yeah. I think a lot of times in my head, I'm like, we as anglers just overthink this whole thing way too much. I mean, it's like you guys mentioned a lot through your podcast of timing. I mean, you just gotta, bump into the right fish at the right time. And I don't know that it's going to matter whether it's a brown bucktail or black. I don't think a fish is coming up like, "Ooh, I'm not touching that." I
No,
just think we
right.
we we just overthink this whole thing way too much. And the longer you fish and you start to feel comfortable with different lures, you just migrate towards them.
I agree completely. And for those that fish in the cold water, late fall, or even if you're lucky enough to fish in the winter, you know very well that timing is everything because the bite windows are short, and that teaches you the most of just like when you're on them, you just freaking stay on them. And in the tournaments, there's kind of a method to that as well, even if it's summer fishing, you know. I don't know if you would you say you're more of a stick and stay and make them pay, Jason, or a run and gun?
So I would say in the beginning stages of the PMTT, I could fish a spot the size of somebody's living room for 2 days and never even think twice about it. And DeMarzene had a lot of success doing that. Now with fishing with Dan, if we were going to fish a small area the size of a hockey rink for 2 days, I'd probably kill myself. I couldn't do it. So I need to look at some different water. I told a story to Brad Hoppy like years ago. DeMars and I were on the Eagle River chain fishing this hump. No weeds, no nothing, just a hump. We had sawfish pre-fishing. I think we caught one. So we had one fish in the tournament. And I think it was like 2 o'clock on Saturday. And it's like, DeMars, we're moving. And he's like, all right, so we pack up, strap the rods down, fire up the big motor. And I made a big lap around the lake and drove right back to the same spot and sat down.
What'd he
And,
say?
and he's like, Mike, we can't leave this spot. And it was like a brand new spot. So then we would joke sometimes. Like there's a couple times where it's like I would just mentally be like, Demars, let's go to a new spot. He's like, all right. And I just make a big circle and show up right back at the spot. And like, new spot. And it's the same one. But I would say now I'm a little bit more of a mover. I don't like to look at the same thing, but on Cass Lake, we fished one spot for a very, very long time, probably more than we have in the 2 years. And then we started hitting other spots. But um, I, I don't know. I kind of listen to my gut and kind of what's going on and get a feel for things. And then depending upon where we're at, that plays a part in it, how well you know the lake and what's
Sure.
happening where you're fishing. But we move a little bit more now.
Yeah, I think we start to move a little bit more now as well. And I think that's a product of us knowing the bodies of water that we're fishing better, which
Yes.
is, it could hurt and has hurt us as opposed to when we were going in fresh and blind. We found what we found. We found fish and we fished those spots during the tournament. And since we didn't know anything about the lake, we didn't find a whole lot because, I mean, you know as well as we do, you could pre-fish for 3 days. That's a long time. You might end up fishing a lot of dead water
Yeah.
during that you know is just a big old X. Not gonna be hitting that. So
Yeah. And you could fish those 3 days and fishing's not great and never have a follow.
even on good spots.
And now you got to say, like, all right, let's cycle back through those 3 days. And what did you like the most? What fishes like we would catch them on back home
Right.
and go that route? And that was a lot of Demarsnay. I mean, we would stay with Bill Beekner and Chris Wallace, which had a ton of success in the early days of the PMTT. Hammernick, Ty Sennett would be floating around, and Hammernick is like the king of pre-fishing. I mean, he can find muskies and catch more pre-fishing, but he burns them all up. I mean, if Demarsnay in that era would see a fish, we would leave. Hammernick would see how many he can catch on the spot. So Demarsnay, sometimes I would say the first 3 or 4 top 10 finishes, I don't know that we ever saw a fish pre-fishing. And then we would kind of joke about it, and we would just kind of go with our gut. Lucky enough that the Eagle River tournament's been at the same body of water for so many years that, you start learning the whole chain. I don't
Mhm.
know it as well as you guys, but I've spent whatever 25 or 26 years there, 4 day increments, so 100 days. I feel like I know some spots on the whole chain. So I'll move around a little bit more today than I did back in the day.
You probably know that 7 to 10 day stretch of June just as well, if not better than we do, maybe.
Yeah, but it pitches different today than it did 15 years ago. Or today's spots that I've caught them on are different than they were back then. And
Yeah.
I don't know if the spots we caught them on way back when held less muskies and people have just or if what's changed, because that's how Dan and I met. Like we would fish the same spot every morning.
Spots
Yeah.
spots recycle in the chain. I don't
Yeah.
like 100% after, guiding a lot more heavily over the years. Like there's 100% like, a couple spots I'd go to on like cranberry and catfish and be like, man, we used to hammer them here. Now they suck this year. And then fast forward the next year, and it's like those are the ones that hold all of the muskies. And the other ones just don't have all of the muskies. It's just like a rotating factor. I don't know. It's odd how that works. I think I actually don't know exactly. Weeds have changed every single year. That's been a little bit of a factor, but there's always like the good green cabbage areas. There's always the good tobacco cabbage areas. The milfoil's changing, and the river grass is changing as well. But
Yeah.
Well,
It's
the
and it's
musky
one of my
spots.
And it's one of my favorite chains. There's a lot of fish in there. You always seem to contact them and catch them. It's a hard tournament to fish. You guys fish the whole circuit, but there's a lot of local anglers that are dynamite fishermen that no one has ever even heard of that fish out there all the time.
We got we got multiple other tournaments on that chain every year, and we got freaking Monday and Tuesday night league out there every single week hammering it. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's quite a few people that know it really well because that this league, I don't know what is it? It's like 20, 25, 20 some years the Monday night league's been going on for.
It's one of my favorite places to go.
That's awesome. I guess
Yeah.
Max, do you have any last question? I was just gonna ask one more. And it would be other than Mille Lacs, what's your favorite fishery that you've ever fished for muskies?
Oh, I would go to Vermilion first.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Great answer. It's a
Love
gorgeous body
that.
of water.
And if it wasn't so far away, I'd love to have a cabin on that lake too.
Hmm.
But it's just too far for a Friday night jaunt up there. I mean, it's scenic. It's the closest thing to Canada without being in Canada.
Yeah. With some monster fish and some really cool stuff to fish up there.
Yeah, and it's huge. There's no matter what the weather is or wind, there's always places to tuck out of the wind. Mille Lacs, you can get blown off there pretty easy,
Yeah.
but yeah, you can always fish Vermilion, and it's awesome. And there's endless amounts of structure. No matter what you like to fish, there's an option for you.
It's definitely one of those systems I would like to continue to learn a lot better. You know, it's super cool place. It's a lot of fun.
Yes, I agree. I think it's the best in Minnesota.
Sweet. Yeah. I mean, it's the coolest to look at, structure wise and everything. Love those deep clear lakes too. Time and place, but
Just the way
hard to
they look
pass
out
up.
there, like the way they glow in that black water, just so cool.
I
Sweet.
agree. Yeah, and my first 50 incher came out of Vermilion too.
Special place in your heart then.
Yep.
That's awesome. Well, Max, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but Jason, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your time, sharing your stories and everything tonight. We had a blast.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. It's been a good time getting to know you over the last couple of years, and hopefully we'll be able to sneak out next year and get some fishing in together. That'd be awesome.
Sounds good.
Sweet. Right
Absolutely.
on.
And next time we'll get Brian on here. We kind of totally dropped
Well,
the ball on even mentioning that.
I put a golf shirt on just so he could pick up on the tag for him and everything. That's my other sport that I enjoy a lot is golf.
Yeah, you're right at home here. I mean, we all have golfing backgrounds, and yeah, it's a bummer Brian couldn't join us here tonight, but Jason Summers part two, we'll make sure Brian's on for that one. We can talk about a little more about hockey, a little more about golf. That'd be great.
There we go.
Oh, for sure. That's probably going to be the first 30 minutes or more, but
Yeah, maybe we'll have you on for a Masters preview next year.
I had the opportunity to go to the Masters this year, which was awesome.
All right. Well, okay. We'll Gus, put that in the Muskies on tap Google Calendar. We'll get Jason on for pre
mhm.
pre a Masters preview next year.
Sounds great to me. I can't wait.
And that'll probably be right before the PMTT or close to it as well, because those two are always pretty close.
Perfect.
True. Perfect. All right. Well, you have a good night, Jason, and thanks for coming on.
You two, see you later.